Good morning, and if you're just joining us, go ahead and type where you're joining us from today in the chat box. Go ahead and throw your location, your state, your territory, your province, your country. We'd love to see where you're from today and where you're joining us from. All right. As we go through the last couple of individuals coming in, we are going to go ahead and jump in and get started. We have a fantastic number of people joining us today from all around the world. I've seen Armenia, Honduras. I've seen students from New Jersey, nearby where I am, New York, Connecticut, Virginia, Pennsylvania. I have a student, hey, from Boston. How's it going today? And we'd love to see our local students here to the Boston campus join. But we have students from Turkey, from California, from the Bronx and New York City. Welcome, welcome, welcome from Mexico, Brazil. My name is Thomas Wise. I'm the Associate Director of Enrollment here at Hult International Business School, and I'm going to be your MC for today. So we can go ahead and jump in and get started. I am going to go through a couple of housekeeping things right before we do so. You've been talking in the chat box for the most part so far, but we have a group of panelists here today, including myself, Dean Mo, as well as our career specialist, Tom Lynch. There is a Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen. During today's presentation, I'm going to ask that you ask all of your questions, not in the chat, but in the Q&A. As we go through, we're hopefully going to be able to answer some of those questions while we're doing the presentation today. But for us to be able to get to your questions at the end, it's incredibly important that you put your questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat. So with that said, and hopefully our housekeeping done, we can go ahead and get started today. I'm going to pass it over to Dean Mo, who is our Dean of our London Undergraduate campus. He's going to walk us through a lot of our academics in our program today. And Dean Mo, take it away.
Thank you so very much, Thomas. Hello, everyone, and thank you and warm welcome from wherever you're joining us from today. My name is Mo Wilan, and I am the Dean of the London Undergraduate campus. I have been with Hult now for the past 8 years. I have also spent some time in the Boston campus. To be more precise, I opened the Boston campus. I spent a year there. Then I was transferred to the San Francisco campus, where I spent 2 years before coming back to London now. Before joining the world of education, I worked in management consulting, and I was also a senior marketing director for West Africa for a French multinational company. But about 10 years ago, I made a conscious decision to transition from the corporate world to the education world, and without doubt, been one of the best decisions I have ever made, for the simple reason that guiding, supporting, and mentoring young people like yourselves to achieve their personal and professional aspirations is something that is very, very close to my heart. So over the next 20 minutes, I will be going over and give you a broad overview of our academic offering and program. And then at the end of my presentation, I will be in the background to answer your questions at the end of the sessions when we have the Q&A. Next slide, please. So we'll start by giving you a bit more about our institution first, before we delve into our program. Choosing your choice of university destination can be a difficult challenge. There are so many different factors to consider, such as the cost of the program, the reputation of the program, the percentage of students and their career destinations. How does the program match with your personal objectives? How far is the school from your home country, and so on. But even though all these are all important factors to consider, but one of the most important is really the quality of the program that you will be joining, especially considering that you will be spending the next 3 or 4 years studying with the school. And we're very proud to say that we are just among the very few schools in the world today who have what we call the triple crown, or the triple accreditation, meaning that all these names you see on this slide, the AACSB, the AMBA, and EQUIS, they have thoroughly gone through our program and validated it. And like I said before, only 1% of business schools have triple crown, And we are the first business school out of America to be given the Triple Crown. And to get this crown, normally all the members who work for these different accreditation bodies are normally deans of other universities, right? They will come to our school over a 1-week period, go through all our processes, our academic offering, before they give it the stamp of approval. So just to reassure you that when you join Hult, you're joining a school with a very rigorous academic offering to provide for you. Next slide, please. And in terms of how best our program prepares students for the future, right? It's important to specify that the program is based on 3 pillars or 3 strong foundations. And these are the world, the future, and you as an individual, you the student. And I will explain each of these 3 different pillars in more detail now, starting with the next slide, which is about the world. Right? You learn about the world. The world is becoming increasingly interconnected. And I believe one of the most important jobs of education is to help us understand our world, right? And what makes our world tick. So when you join Hult, you will be exposed in terms of understanding how business is done in different parts of the world. And more than that also is to make you have the skills to be able to navigate wherever your future career might take you in the world. You should be ready to adapt and be able to add value to the organizations that hire you. Next slide, please. And what we mean by our world also is about knowing first how the world works and how business connects with the world, right? Understanding what is happening to our world means that you as future managers can make the right decisions about best responding to the challenges that happen in different parts of the world. But also, I always say that when you study at Hult, the world comes to you in the classroom, right? You can see on this slide that we have over 130 nationalities represented on campus, and not one nationality constitutes more than 9%, right? So if you look at the London campus, just as an example here, you find that the most represented now are the Italians, then you have the French, and then the Germans. But each of these have 9%, 8%, and 7% respectively. It is also safe to say that almost every student who studies at Hult speaks at least 3 languages. And like the students, the professors, and the faculty, and the team who work at Hult, we come from all parts of the world. Next slide, please. And in practice, what we mean by we will expose you to the world and we will bring you to the world, expose you to the world means that you have the opportunity to study in 5 global business cities, meaning that when you study at Hult, you can study in London, in Boston. These are our dedicated campuses, but in the summer months, you can opt to study in San Francisco, in Dubai, or in Shanghai, or in London and in Boston, depending on where you start first. And for us, when you study at each of these 5 major global business locations, what it means and what we expect from our students is that by studying in Dubai or Shanghai, you will be exposed to how business is done in different parts of the world. To be more specific, if you take courses in Shanghai in the summer, you will do courses such as doing business in Shanghai. If you spend a summer semester in Dubai, you will take a course called Doing Business in the Middle East. And if you go to San Francisco, we expect students to take a course called Doing Business, the Silicon Valley Perspective. And what we're trying to say here is that the students of today, I call them global citizens, right? The world is your home. Wherever you find your happiness, your work should be your home. And for us, we don't wait until you graduate to explore how business is done in these diverse cities. But you have the chance to experience that when you are a student studying at Hult. So we will bring the world to the classroom means that you will study with people from every part of the world. I mean, just looking at the chat now, I have seen people from Indonesia, from Mexico, from Morocco. So the world comes to you in the classroom because you will work with students from all parts of the world. but we also expose the world to you by giving you the chance to study in multiple locations to better understand how business is done in different parts of the world. Next slide, please. The second pillar or foundation of our program is about the future. What the future holds, nobody knows for sure, but we can also agree that the future belongs to those who plan for it today. So when you study at Hult, we make sure that you understand the technologies that are evolving and that continue to shape the way business is done today, so that you can have the skills and the knowledge and the competencies to be able to become familiar with these evolving technologies, but more importantly, to use them in your lives as students and also as future business professionals. And I will explain what I mean by the future in more detail, looking at technologies that are shaping our world in the next slide. I think we will all agree that technology is always evolving now and is disrupting and changing the way businesses do their business, and also how me and you as consumers relate to these businesses in terms of using their products and services. I mean, if you look at today, most businesses are driven by artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, blockchain, cybersecurity. I mean, with all the wildfires going on in the world, people are now looking at, different sources of energy now, as opposed to the conventional ones we have now. So when you study at Hult, all the courses that are listed here, all these disruptive technologies, we will give you insights about how they impact business decisions. And let me say it very early on that when you come to study at Hult, we don't look at you as a student. We look at you as a future manager or a future business leader who is going through their training and preparation for tomorrow. And like I said before, these technologies will continue to disrupt and change the way businesses perform. And for you who aspire to be business leaders of tomorrow, you must be very familiar with these technologies to understand what are their repercussions on the businesses that you will work for tomorrow, but more importantly, how businesses can leverage these technologies to become more competitive and successful. Just to give you an example now, Uber has formed a partnership or a joint venture with Volvo in Sweden to develop cars that don't need drivers, like driverless cars. I'm sure you will agree with me that Uber's biggest expense now, or their biggest cost base, are their drivers. So what they're looking at now is working with Volvo, which is the biggest car manufacturer out of Sweden, is to form a partnership so that they can develop vehicles that can run on their own, right? And for you all as future managers, you need to understand the impact of technology on the business that you will run tomorrow. Because the job or your jobs tomorrow as managers, the most important job, I should say, for you as managers tomorrow is decision making. Managers are paid to make the right decisions, right? And technologies will shape the decisions we make tomorrow. And at Hult, what we do is to make you understand how do these technologies affect our business operations and how can we take advantage of these technologies to better move forward the businesses that you will work for. Next one, please. And then the third aspect or the third foundation of our program is about yourselves as individual students. For many of you, coming to study in Hult, Boston might be the first time you're studying in a different country or in a different city. Or for some of you, it might be actually the first time you're studying away from home altogether. And I always say that going to university is a journey of self-discovery, right? You're trying to understand who you are as an individual. Like I said before, this might be the first time you have to make decisions on your own, right? Without mom and dad by your side. And because you're going to be spending 3-4 years with us, we find it incumbent upon us to make sure that we give you the skills that you need to become more holistic and more rounded business individuals. Next slide, please. And when I talk about skills, right? When you come to Hult from your first semester right to the end of your final semester, we will inculcate you in such skills as being able to communicate effectively, right? Being able to communicate effectively. It's about being analytical, being able to make the right decisions, how to work with in teams, right? And also what we call cross-cultural awareness, right? Understanding that the world is made up of people in different cultures, and you all have to work together to understand how each person, based on their culture, work. So it's not only about getting the grade, but also building your self skills, right? We will give you the technical knowledge in the classroom, but the soft skills also are very critical now. And I'm sure our Director of Careers, Tom, will talk about that, but there's a lot of emphasis now on building soft skills. So when you study with us, I can tell you right away that in your assignments, you will be expected to present your ideas or your answers to corporate executives in the classroom or in their offices as part of your training, right? And we'll be with you every step of the way to make sure that we support you to gain these very critical soft skills. Next slide, please. Right, again, another skill that you have to think about is being self-aware, knowing what is happening around you. Getting to know who you are as an individual is very critical. And I think studying away from home will give you that opportunity to discover yourselves, your inner selves, right? What are your competencies? What are your areas of weaknesses? What do you need to work on to become a more effective person? I mean, all these are soft skills that we will inculcate in you during your studies. And I suppose the next slide, again, Liz Ann will talk about having a growth mindset, which is another skill that we will inculcate in you. I think I myself have taught in universities in at least 12 different countries. And I mean with different universities. My last assignment was in Grenoble in France, and many other schools in England as well. But I think what sets Hult apart, and this is really something we pay great emphasis on, is that we put heavy emphasis on what we call learning by doing or experiential learning, right? We believe that what you learn, you should be able to apply it before you graduate and start your careers, right? I am a strong believer that knowledge not applied is knowledge wasted. And the most effective way to prepare you guys as future managers is that I, as a professor, can teach you in the classroom the concepts, right? The theories, right? But at the same time, we should give you the platform and the opportunity to apply what you have learned, so that by the time you start your careers, you have gained enough experience in terms of how what you have learned is actually applied in real life contextual settings. So when you join Hult, what this means in practice is, like, I teach marketing courses, such as marketing planning and strategy, principles of marketing, brand management, digital and social media marketing. And what I do is, if I'm teaching brand management, I will teach the students everything they need to know about how to build and manage a brand. But the assignment for which they earn the grades, I will bring a real life company that wants to develop their brand. The students will work on it for 7 weeks, and then the company will come back to the classroom, and the students will present their solutions to the company executives. We believe that this is the way education should be in the 21st century. Next slide again. So we call it experiential learning, learning by doing, applying what you have learned, but we also call it challenge learning, right? In other words, in each year during your studies here and in the courses that you will be doing here, you will be working on many real life projects, right? So in your first year as a freshman, you will all take part in what we call the Startup Challenge. In your second year, you will do what we call the Social Impact Challenge, right? Social Impact Challenge, for example, we now partner with the Hult Prize. I'm sure many of you have heard about the Hult Prize, but if you have not, I'll just give a small context here. The Hult Prize is also founded by the founder of Hult Business School. And what it does is it invites students from over 200 universities all over the world to come up with solutions to social issues that are facing our world. For example, creating jobs for refugees. What do we do to end the water shortage in the world? Right? These are very serious issues that we face as humanity. And you will be asked to come up with solutions. And the team that wins the solution or the team that wins the challenge will be given a $1 million prize to bring their solution to life. And then in your third year, by that time, you have decided on your major, which I will talk about in a minute. You have decided on your major. If you major in marketing, you will have a core challenge or a specialization challenge, right? If you major in finance, the same. If you major in entrepreneurship, you will have a challenge. But what all these challenges have in common is that they provide you as students the platform and the opportunity to learn what the professors have taught you, right? But you apply it using real businesses, right? Real companies, not a 20-year-old Harvard case study or a challenge from a textbook. No, your assignments are with real companies, right? And we strongly believe that this is the way forward, because collaborating with companies to bring them to the classroom to provide the assignments that the students work on brings many benefits. For example, for you as students, it validates that what you have learned in the class is actually what happens when you become a professional tomorrow. The second is that it exposes you and to all these big companies that we work with, so that when you want to look for an internship or a job, you've already built that network because these companies come to the classroom. So there are a lot of benefits, and I think this is pretty unique with Hult. Next slide, please. It is also important to articulate that, yes, we are a business school, and we're strictly a business school, but we are also cognizant of the fact that as business students, you need to gain ideas and insights of non-business courses as well. So our curriculum transcends beyond just giving you business knowledge. What I mean by this is that when you study at Hult, you'll be taking courses that are not strictly business, but we still find it very relevant for you to know, right? So our job as an institution is to shape you as an individual, a complete holistic individual, both in the classroom and also outside the classroom, but also in terms of business knowledge and non-business knowledge. So you'll be taking some courses that are not strictly business related, but you still need to know them to help you in your future careers. Next slide, please. So when you study at Hult, in your freshman year and in your sophomore year, often you will take general courses, for example, principles of marketing, principles of finance, principles of management, ethics, and so on. But once you come to your junior year, we expect you to declare a major. Business is very broad, and there are so many different specializations that you can pursue while studying business. So at Hult, we offer five majors, right? You can major in business analytics, which is very, very hot now. You can major in entrepreneurship, especially if you're thinking of starting your own business. You can major in finance, in management, or in marketing, right? But at the same time, too, you can decide to add a minor to complement your major. For example, many students will major in marketing, but they will minor in psychology. Some students will major in finance, but they will complement it with computer science, for example. So there are both options, but in your third year, you will be expected to declare a major. If you're not sure about how to choose a major, we will have many events on campus to help you decide. So for example, every year in April, we will organize what we call the Majors Fair, right? And if you're thinking of marketing, the Marketing Major Fair will mean that we will invite people from industry who have spent their careers in marketing to come and speak to you about how to get into marketing, what does a marketing job entails. And we also invite former students of ours who now work in the marketing to share their experiences with you. And some of us who are professors will also give you advice about which major you can choose as your chosen specialization. Next slide, please. As regards the duration of the program, depends on your high school that you attended and the high school program you studied. and whether you are a university transfer student or not. Typically, if you come from a year 12, a country where the high school ends at year 12, you are expected to follow the 4-year program. If you come from a country where the high school goes up to year 13, for example, you've done the English A levels, you know, or the German Abitur, Italian Maturita, or the French Baccalaureate, you get transfer credits up to 30, which means that instead of 120 credits that you have to complete for your degree, you will only do 90, which you can spread 30 per year. So your program will be 3 years. And the 2-year route is for those, for example, who transfer from other universities, whereby you can transfer up to 60 credits and then use the next 2 years to complete your degree. However, looking at past students, the average time that students spend here to complete their undergraduate program can be like 30 months, but it's 30 months or 2.5 years because you must be willing to spend the summer semesters to earn more credits, right? So every year from May to July or May to August, we have what we call summer 1 and summer 2. And each summer semester is 5 weeks, and you can take up to 6 credits each summer semester. So if you spend 2 years doing summer courses, you can accumulate as much as 24 credits. And if you add that 30 credits make it per year, you can reduce your degree study program by almost a year if you stay and spend the summer semesters studying with us. Next slide, please. The outbreak of the COVID over the past 15 to 18 months have really transformed everybody's life and touched everybody's life. And same with businesses. For some businesses, it meant that they collapsed completely. You know, many hotels, for example, airlines, you know, restaurants, they have really taken the hit because of COVID. And for others, it's been an opportunity, right? If you look at Netflix, really, they have grown their customer base because people need to stay at home and watch more. The education space or universities are not an exception. We have also been affected by the COVID, meaning that many students cannot travel to be on campus. So we have introduced since last year what we call limitless learning. And I will explain this in the next slide. What limitless learning means is that if you are accepted to Hult and you cannot come and join us at the beginning of the semester because your country is in lockdown or there are delays in processing your visa, or you just don't feel comfortable to be with people, you can stay in your home country and join our classes online. And whenever you feel ready to come to campus, you can come in and join the same people that the same course that you've been following online physically in the classroom. As this, you can see on this slide here, there are some students on the left with the professor who are inside the classroom. Of course, there's 2 meters self-space. But on the right-hand side, you can see that there are some students who are in their dorms, who are at home or in a different country, and they're following the same class like those who are in the classroom. So if you are, for example, in Indonesia, and because you cannot come to London at the beginning of the semester, you can start the class online, and whenever you fly into Boston, you can walk straight in and join the same class that you were following when you were back home in Indonesia. You can also join online for the first semester, for the first year, and then make the transition to in-person whenever it's ideal. But what we have done is that we have made the right moves to make sure that COVID doesn't serve as a disadvantage or disrupt your studies. Regardless of your geographical location, you can always follow us or follow your studies online, and whenever it's appropriate, you can always come and join the same class in person on campus. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So if you should opt to spend your first semester at home, right, again, using the example of Indonesia, you can start the program at home. You can use the first semester to be at home, the first year, the first 2 semesters, whatever the situation is, and then join us in person whenever it is appropriate. there are some disadvantages as well as advantages, right? The advantage of starting at home and coming later is that you save a lot in terms of you don't have to pay for your maintenance in Boston. You don't have to pay for rent whilst you're in Boston, right? And your living expenses, you don't have to think about it now without compromising the quality of your learning, right? And then you can always, like we said before, come back to campus to get the interpersonal experience, to meet people from all over the world, and to experience life away from home at a later stage in your studies. So whichever option you want to choose for, we have put in place the technology to make that possible. And the next slide, we're going to play a video to show you how it actually works. We don't have that video this time, right? But anyway, the technology is there to make it work for you, whether you want to start remotely and come and join us physically in the classroom later on. I thank you all for your kind attention. I am now going to pass over to my colleague, Tom Lynch, who is our Director of Careers and Corporate Relations, to talk to you about our careers.
Thank you, Dean Mo. Yes, I'm happy to be here to talk to all of you. We have great numbers today and wonderful locations all around the world. So it's so great to see that. Before I jump into it, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So if we want to jump to the next slide. So as Dean Mo mentioned, I'm the Career Development Manager of the Undergraduate program here at the Boston campus. I'm going into my 6th academic year with Hult. So I've worked with the master's programs and then moved over to the undergraduate program as it's grown tremendously over the past few years in Boston. A little bit more about myself. Prior to coming to Hult, my first job out of college was accounting at an educational tour company. I did that for a few years and then moved to Amsterdam to manage an accounting team over there. At that point, I thought I wanted something a little more creative. So I moved over to Ireland to get my master's in management and marketing. Came back to the Boston area and was a marketing manager for a small IT company for a little over 4 years. The reason why I'm telling the story is because this is where I had kind of that, what we call in the kind of the coaching world, is that aha moment, right? Where I took some time to reflect and to be a little bit more self-aware, as Dean Mo was referencing. And I really reflected on what makes me happy. What have I done in the past that I really enjoyed and felt fulfilled? And it was the aspects of being international, exposed to international people, cultures, development, managing a team, coaching. So I ended up taking that reflection and really focusing on what career path makes more sense for me. And I ended up moving over to higher ed and career coaching here at Hult, where I can work with you to leverage my background in finance and marketing and other industries as well to help you find, a fulfilling career path. So that's what brought me to Hult. So next slide, please. Great. So we'll just go over a few kind of fast facts, and then I'll jump into some of the programming here at Hult. So you can see all of these on the hult.edu website as well, but I figured I'd go through a few while I have you here. So 6 months post-graduation, 98% of students or graduates are employed or pursuing an advanced degree. Really cool stat here is 55% of graduates are working in a country different than the country of origin. So I love that, right? It just speaks to the volume of how international we are, which I love. And then this is just a breakdown of that 98%, right? So 62% are full-time employed, 6 months post-graduation. Some opt to go back to a family business. Some start their own business. So this is actually a stat that jumped up quite a bit this year from the 2019 outcomes. And then about 11% or so opt to go into post-graduation internships. Next slide, please. So just a little more of a drill down on some of the outcomes and where students land. I'm not going to go over all of these individually, but you can see the top 10 employers on the left there globally. It's not just for Boston campus, but globally for the undergraduate program at Hult. And I kind of carved out the top 3 by industry and function for you as well, just to give you some insights. So industry, meaning, what does the company do? So financial services, about 23%, followed by technology, and then media and entertainment. And then placement by function. So what is the role, or what is the person doing every day? And the majority are marketing and sales at 44%, followed by operations, logistics, and then finance and accounting at 13. So we do have quite a variety, among function and industry and employers. So it's just give you a little insight there. Next slide, please. So these are what we call milestones. So I want to just go over the first and second year milestones with you, and then talk a little about how we get there, which is the programming that we offer. And what we mean by milestones is when you think of yourself as a first year student at Hult, or a second year, third, fourth, we want you to think about, what do I need to accomplish by the end of that year? And from a careers perspective, we've come out with some milestones that we want you to aim to accomplish, and we give you the tools and guidance to do that. So looking at by the end of your first year, we would hope that you can spend some time and reflect and become more self-aware. Now, this happens in many areas, right? Dean Mo talked a lot about this. This happens in the classroom. It also happens when you work with careers. We do workshops on this. We do a lot of one-on-one advising where this can happen, which I'll talk about in a minute. And kind of one of the main takeaways is, can you identify your top 5 interest, skills, and motivators by the end of this first year? It doesn't mean that can't change. Your experience at Hult is very transformative and it will likely change, but we want to encourage you to think about this and really reflect on it. As I shared that story about myself, reflection is very, very important as you go through the program. I honestly wish I did it more myself when I was an undergrad. I wish I spent more time with my career center. But at the end of the day, it all led me here. So it all's meant to be, right? Developing market awareness and identifying top 5 roles and industries of interest, and understanding the job search framework, right? So being able to confidently say, I know what a proper job search strategy looks like. I know what I need to do when the time comes to find that internship or find that job upon graduation. At the end of your second year, conducting market research. There's a lot out there, right? So, business analytics is something that Dean Mo talked about that is really hot right now. It's blown up, right? So where is that popular? Where are the companies that are hiring for these roles? Where are they located? And how can you be strategic in your job search, right? Rather than just applying online, you want to think about, what are the companies that are hiring it? What are the roles? What are the skills? What are the soft skills that I need to accomplish or have in order to be a top candidate for the roles that I'm interested in? So honing those kind of target companies maybe to about 40 by the end of your second year. Really think about your professional network and your brand by the end of your second year, and making sure you have a completed LinkedIn profile, right? And then thinking about strategizing an internship plan. As a career advisor, I'm always going to push internships. I think they're fantastic, not only to put on your resume or CV, but it's fantastic for networking, building confidence, building skills. There's so many things you can gain from an internship, and I'm actually going to share a couple stories in a moment as an example. So we would love for you to do an internship summer of your junior year and summer going into your senior year as well. But you'd work with your career advisor and we can help you there. Next slide, please. Great. So those are the milestones for year 1 and year 2, right? And we of course have them for year 3 and 4, but just want to be respectful of time here and not cover too much. But this is how we get you there, right? So I broke it down into about 4 pieces. So one-on-one advising. When you come to Hult, you would have an advisor from your day 1 to the end of your program. And you can meet with me, you can meet with another advisor. And that's, 45-minute sessions, one-on-one, and it can be anything from, you know what, Tom, I'm totally panicked. I have no idea what I want to do. And my friends all know what they want to do. And I need to figure it out, right? So we have those conversations sometimes. And then we also have conversations as, Tom, I know exactly what I want. I just need a little bit of guidance on how I get there. Or I got this great internship offer or great job offer, and can you help me with the salary negotiation? Or I have an interview lined up. Can you do a mock interview with me? Or can you help me prepare for an interview? And everything in between, networking, your pitch, your story, how do you talk to people in a professional setting? All these things we can work through one-on-one. Skills workshops. We cover a lot of the topics that I just mentioned in these skilling workshops, where we provide you content, and then we carve out time within that workshop to actually get it done, right? So if you're looking for an internship, we'll do an internship workshop where we'll provide you the content, the tools, the guidance, et cetera. You'll come to that workshop and we'll break out into groups, and we will actually put a plan together that you can look at and then work from, so you know that you're making progress in attaining that goal. So we do like CV or resume workshops, we do LinkedIn, networking, salary negotiation, interviewing, we do mock interview workshops, et cetera. We also have some tools, right? So not everything has to be a one-on-one with me or attending a workshop, although we would love you to do that. We have some tools virtually that you can leverage as well, some AI platforms, artificial intelligence. And we have things called VMock, which helps you with your resume. So you upload your resume, it gives you great feedback, gives you a score, right? This past year, I was kind of celebrating students that got a high score and kind of blasting it out to the screens on campus, which was really fun. So we had a lot of students get some great scores there. We have something called Prep Lounge, which any student that's interested in going into consulting can leverage that platform to help prepare for case study interviews. We have a job board through Handshake, which a lot of schools use that. And we put all of our jobs up on Handshake as well for students to leverage, to apply for, et cetera. Handshake is also a wonderful platform where a lot of corporations now are hosting virtual events. And it's a fantastic way to connect with, connect with employers, corporations, introduce yourself, and kind of start that conversation. So we're seeing a lot of success there. And then, of course, networking, corporate connections. Covered this a little bit already, but we partner with the corporate relations team. I focus more on the career development, and we have a corporate relations team that brings in companies into the classroom, potentially like that Dean Mo was talking about, to do some of those projects. We also bring them in for recruitment for virtual or on-campus career fairs. Recently, they've been virtual due to COVID. And we do like roundtable conversations with employers. We also bring alumni back for industry panels. As Dean Mo was talking about too, it's kind of an addition to that major fair where you can get to connect with alumni that understand what it's like to be in your shoes and to go through the job search. And you can also learn a little bit more about what they do. So if you're in between career paths, you can ask them a little bit like, tell me what a day's like, a day in the life of, and you can really learn about, is consulting something for me? Is marketing for me? Is finance for me? And again, that's all part of that reflection and self-awareness that we talk about all the time. That is really important. Next slide, please. Awesome. So I'm not going to take too much more time up, but I do want to just close out with a couple success stories here. So Adriana will be graduating this fall. I've been working with her since she came to Hult, actually, which was really fun. And she's a management major and a marketing minor. And what we've talked about over the last year or so is she's a little indecisive of which path to take, which is totally understandable, right? Sometimes it's hard to make that decision. What's the right decision? And the plan we came up with was, let's see if we can get an internship in each one. And that will give you the clarity that you need to kind of focus on what that path should be and where your energy should be focused. So she saw an opportunity on the Hult job board and got a social media marketing internship in the spring of 2021 for a nonprofit, Charity, I believe it was, which is located on the West Coast. So it was a remote internship. Great experience, gained some clarity on the things she liked and disliked. And the plan was to then this summer get an internship in human resources, in recruitment. And that was the other area she was really focused in within management. And she did it. That's why this is such a wonderful story, is that she created this plan with the career team and she executed on it. And she was able to land an wonderful internship, a really impressive internship actually, at Mass General Hospital, which is actually right down the street from Hult, oddly enough, where she has been in the recruitment team, right? So interviewing candidates, et cetera. So she's got to see that side of the kind of job search as well, which has been really interesting. Fantastic story. And now in talks about, what does the future look like with her and them upon graduation. So hopefully some good things to come there. So great internship success story. And then I want to leave you with one more success story as well with the next slide, please. So Natalia, also another student I've been working with since she arrived here at Hult Boston, and she's from Spain. And what we talked about in this kind of past year, we had a few different areas of interest, and we whiteboarded a lot to figure out, the skills, the soft skills, interests, et cetera, and kind of ended on more of a consulting path. She ended up applying to Gartner in Spain, where she's from, and got an interview. She reached out and said, Tom, I got this interview for this great role and wanted to kind of prepare. And I said, great. So she took it really serious, which is awesome. And we did a mock interview. We talked about common questions, and she really prepped well. And why I'm sharing this story is because this is a bit of a rarity, but I think shows if you prepare well, what can happen. And she made it through all the rounds. There was a case study involved as well. So she utilized that platform, Prep Lounge, that I talked about earlier. So it was a very robust interview process as well. I think there were 4 rounds. In the final round, one of the VPs was there, and she's actually in charge of the leadership development program at Gartner. And what a leadership development program is, it's usually a 2-year rotational program. So when you graduate, you go to this company, they hire you for this 2-year rotational program, and you go to different areas within the business. So you can learn about finance, you can learn about the marketing, operations, et cetera, to hopefully move you into more of a leadership position in the company. She was so impressed with Natalia during this interview process that she actually kind of poached her. She took her from the role she was applying for and said, we would love to have you in this leadership development program if you're interested. And of course she was. It's a very competitive program. And because she prepped so well and it made such a great impression, she then ended up in this wonderful competitive program. So really, really happy for her. I check in with her once in a while, and she's loving it so far. So fantastic story. I love to share these stories. As you can see, I have a smile on my face. It's so fun to celebrate with you guys. So when you come to Hult, hopefully we can smile together and celebrate together on all your wins. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Thomas. I think he's going to talk a bit more about student life on Boston campus.
Thanks, Tom. So yeah, I am also going to tell you guys just a little bit about me. I started off today, for those of you who joined us a little bit later, I am one of our enrollment advisors who works with students here in the United States. And so like many of the questions that I've been answering in the chat box in the background, when I say talk to your enrollment advisor, what I mean is talk to a person like me. And we have enrollment advisors for territories and regions all over the world. You've probably actually received an invitation from them in order to join this open house today. And so I'll be talking a little bit about student life, and then I'll walk through the application process and things like tuition, financial aid. All right, next slide, please. So there are lots of opportunities to get engaged on campus. And please keep in mind, by the way, that this is the Boston campus itself. There are clubs and organizations on campus for students. There's also the Hult Student Association, which for those of you who are familiar with college programming is a bit like student government. There are cultural celebration planning committees, considering how international we are, not super surprising. There are networking groups that relate directly to what Tom was speaking about with careers. There are peer support groups for students who are looking to ground themselves, especially since, as both Tom and Dean Mo spoke on, you're in a brand new place going to college for the first time for the most part. And there are many other things on campus. So we'll run through a couple of them and then we'll dive into admissions. All right, next slide, please. So we'll start off a little bit with professional clubs. These are opportunities to get engaged beyond just being in your classroom. These are, as we were talking about with careers, the opportunities to get involved with your local community and the opportunities to get involved with other students who are pursuing similar goals to yourself. So there are opportunities like the BCA Think Tank. You can actually find them online. They do conferences and conversations on campus. They actually got started in the last few years. And there you can see one of their posters over there on the left, talking about sustainability and food production and agriculture, which fit fit very well with the Hult Prize competition on campus in the last year. And on the right, the Women in Business program. And that is a brand new club and organization on campus designed specifically to increase the representation of women and non-binary people within the higher levels of business. Because statistically speaking, women represent a pretty large percentage of college students around the world, but they represent a minority of business people and a minority of business students. So we encourage our young women on campus to connect and engage with each other and be able to develop and grow their professional networks outside of Hult as well. Next slide, please. We also have sports clubs on campus. So while we are not an NAIA or a NCAA school, for those of you who are familiar with that for the United States, we do offer sports clubs on campus, including soccer and rugby, soccer and football and rugby, as well as volleyball and tennis and golf are pretty popular sports. This is a pretty outdoors campus. We are situated right on the Charles River. So as we'll look in a few minutes, there's a lot of physical activity for students who are interested in that in and around campus. There are a lot of opportunities to do that, both as a student here playing for a team, as well as a student off campus as well. Next slide, please. We also offer social clubs. A large part of Hult's mission is to encourage you to think globally, encourage you to think socially. And so one of the things that we work very hard on in class is to provide you with the opportunity to think about ethics and principles and social sustainability. And we live that on campus as well. There are numerous opportunities for students to get involved through environmental awareness clubs, as well as clubs that do community outreach, both on the Boston and the London campuses. And so if you find yourself particularly drawn to social impact, these are organizations that would be a great fit for you as well. Next slide, please. So on this list, you can see a selection of the clubs and organizations that we offer here on the Boston campus. There are numerous professional clubs. As Tom mentioned, this is an excellent way for you to network off campus, even outside the more formal structure of the careers team. A lot of these organizations go out and they speak with people. So for example, the Global Gazette, which is one of our papers on campus, they are comprised of students who are able to go out and do interviews. And the people that you're interviewing is a great opportunity to sit down and get to know them and get FaceTime with them and speak with them about opportunities. And once they have your name in their head and your name in yours, you're able to sit down and have a conversation with them in the future to help you grow your professional network in the city that you live in. There are also numerous social societies on campus. A lot of our students are very interested in developing their local organizations, developing their student clubs. And so if you see something on here that is, or if you don't see something on here rather, and you want to see it as a student, you can always start the club during your first year. The campuses are still growing and still changing. And so there's plenty of opportunity to not just be a leader, but to be a creator on campus as well. Next slide, please. Hult Students Association, or the HSA as it's shortened to, is our student government on campus. And so if you feel that you are a particularly strong leader, or perhaps you're involved in student government right now, or ultimately you just want to have a word and a say in what we do on campus, you're welcome to join this organization and run for its positions, as well as help it put on all of the organizational opportunities on campus. So in many cases, this is the organization that helps organize a lot of things that take place on campus. And it's one of the things that allows us to have so much pride in our program, in our school, and what we do during the school year. Next slide, please. And we are, as has been mentioned time and time again, and as I'm sure you'll hear and read as you go through your application process, we are an exceptionally diverse and international school. 92% of our undergraduates come from outside the United States or the UK, and no more than 8% of our student body comes from any one given country. And so celebrating our students' cultural heritages is actually an incredibly important part of what we do on Hult, on campus during the school year. And so as you can see, there's a lot of different cultural events that happen happen on campus. During a less COVID-19 year, when campus is packed, there are things happening every week or so on campus, different celebrations and different holidays from different students' cultural backgrounds, as well as cultural exchange days where students are able to visit and workshop and show each other's cultures. It's one of the coolest parts personally to me about working on campus is that we do have such a diverse and international student body, and it is evident in everything that we do and the things that we put on campus itself. Next slide, please. All right, and so this is now my bread and butter, and I apologize for those of you who've been asking questions. I promise we'll get to them at the very, very, very end. For some of you, I did mark that we would be answering these questions live, and this is what we're going to do during this section. Applying to Hult is a process that takes place throughout the year, and you are going to have a partner in that process, and that's your enrollment advisor, someone like me who helps you walk through every single step as you go from a student at an event like this to a student who's applying. And if you're admitted, going through financial aid, if you're required to get a visa, helping you walk through your visa process, ultimately from beginning until end, wherever that is. Next slide, please. So many of you are at the first stage of this application list, which is starting your online application. You can start your application online at hult.edu/apply, or you can complete your application on the Common App or on UCAS. When you complete your application, you're going to need a couple of documents in order for your application to hit its first round of review. You're going to need a personal statement. You'll also need at least one letter of recommendation, and you'll need a transcript that shows up to the end of your junior year grades, your 11th year grades. Once we have all of those, we'll do a review and determine whether or not you'll move on to the second section of the process, which is the personal assessment interview. We believe very heavily in holistic admissions, which means that students, when they go through the admissions process at Hult, we want to know as much about you and the person that you are as we can. So the interview is an opportunity for you to sit down on Zoom face-to-face with one of our enrollment team members and talk about yourself. Just talk about the things that you're passionate about, the things that you're interested in. We want to see who you are outside of a piece of paper. We want to know what you think about yourself, the challenges that you faced and overcome, the strengths that you've shown throughout your life, and what kind of person you would like to be after you graduate from a program. After we've received all that, you receive an admissions decision. And so start to finish, the timeline for admissions decisions after submitted your application is on average about 4 to 6 weeks. So it's a pretty quick turnaround for students. If you've been admitted to the program, you'll then enter the process to apply for things like scholarships and awards if you plan to apply for those, as well as be invited to accepted student events, including accepted students weekends and exclusive opportunities to have coffee chats with some of our professors and our deans. And then finally, the deadline to confirm your place depends on whether or not you are an early decision student or a regular decision student. If you apply early decision, the expectation is to confirm your place by February 15th, while the confirmation deadline for regular decision students is May 1st. After that point, after paying your seat deposit and deciding to attend Hult after that period during summer, you'll work with your enrollment advisor to get campus ready. Do things like reserve your flights, book your housing, as well as acquire your visa if you need to, and submit all of those final documents, those IB scores, AP scores, your high school diploma, your transcripts, things like that. And then in the fall, you're being welcomed to campus by those of us on staff here, and you start your college career. Can I go to the next slide, please? So in terms of solid numbers, tuition on the Boston campus is $49,950 for year one for incoming students next year. And the London campus is priced in Great British pounds, and that is 32,500 Great British pounds. We do offer numerous scholarships and award opportunities for students. Scholarships are merit-based, which means anyone can apply for them regardless of financial need. One, of course, is academic excellence. Academic excellence is a scholarship that is on the basis of either your adjusted GPA or your inserted test scores, typically the SAT or the ACT, while the others, global generation, growth mindset, future leader, tech and innovation, you will apply for those after if you're admitted to the program. Scholarships range range from $10,000 to $5,000, while scholarships and awards in general range from $5,000 to $15,000. The awards are much more competitive, and they are also need-based. So students do need to demonstrate some level of financial need in order to qualify for these awards. And these awards are based on our pillars, the things that we want to see in our students when they arrive on campus. These are things like social impact, which we talked about before, as well as entrepreneurial spirit, and of course, women in business, in order to drive our desire to increase the representation of young women in the business world. All right, next slide, please. And so finally, the one thing I do want to talk about is early decision. And so early decision candidates do have the opportunity to earn their master's degree at no additional cost, which means that students can earn their bachelor's and their master's degree in less time than some students take to get just their bachelor's. We believe that a commitment to Hult, which is an early decision application, is a significant investment, and we hope to return that favor as well. The deadline to apply for your first early decision deadline is November 1st. So your application does need to be in by that date and marked early decision in order to move forward in the early decision process. Early decision also comes with a requirement to confirm your place earlier, which is typically the deadline of February 15th. All right, and I think that takes us to the very end. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So we're in our Q&A, and I realize we're a bit over, but I do want to take 10 minutes to just run through some of these questions. If I could have Tom and Dean Mo join me again so we can go through our panel here. I'm going to run through some of the more technical questions with admissions really quick, and then we'll jump in. So first off, does Hult offer financial aid for international students? And the answer is yes. Hult does offer financial aid to all students. We do not region lock our financial aid. We're an international school. The majority of our students are international, including our US students who are studying in the UK and the UK students who are studying in the US. And so we do not region lock or prevent international students from seeking scholarships and awards during their application process. For TOEFL, the TOEFL score for admission is 80 in order to attend Hult's campus in Boston, as well as to apply for the visa to study on the UK campus. So you do need to take, if you're not educated within a predominantly English language school, so the last few years of your high school in English, you are required to take an English test for admission to the program. Depending on where you are from, you may also be required to take an English test in order to secure a visa to the United States or to the UK. All right, so I actually think that this is a great question, and I'd love to hear both of your takes on it. This actually blew me away when I first read it because it's one of the best questions I think I've ever gotten. What makes Hult special, and what are we proud of most about our programs and our campus? And Tom or Dean Mo.
Yeah, I will jump first. I think having been with Hult for 8 years and having worked in many different schools, I can say safely that one of the things I'm proudest most is the way we prepare our students for their future careers, right? In the sense that they become even professionals whilst they study. I cannot overemphasize what I said before, that at Hult, we don't teach students, but we prepare future leaders, right? In other words, by the time you graduate, you are ready to join any company in the world and add value to them, compared to other schools that are basically just teaching you the theory and saying goodbye. We put more emphasis on the fact that you should be able to apply what you've learned, and this should stand you in good stead post-graduation. And the second answer to that question, I will have to poach Tom's answer here, which I think is at the top of his head, is our employment rates post-graduation, right? Post-graduation. And just about, I flew back to London just a month ago after finishing my assignment in San Francisco. And I will never forget this. We had a boy from Zimbabwe called Tino Tendaheri. I think, Thomas, you can remember him very well. We also have Mayo from India. And there was another boy from Georgia who studied in the San Francisco campus called Ilya Gogits. And they all went to start work with Goldman Sachs in Utah, in America, right? And I think the reason why our employment rates are so high post-graduation is mainly because of the first point I mentioned earlier. as well as the excellent career guidance and support that people like Tom give them, so that when they speak to employers, they can see even from the interview that these kids are ready to get in and add value right after school, right? And also I will finally add the third point that, yes, many schools today are allowing their students to travel to other countries and study, but with other schools, right? I mean, I used to work in France, and then you have students coming from different US universities to study at the French campus. But I think with us, it's very unique. At Hult, whether you go to San Francisco, whether you come to London, whether you go to Shanghai or you go to Dubai, it's the same school, same program, same culture everywhere. And very few schools can talk about that. And finally, I think to the last, no, two more points actually. The next one is the fact that you only have to look at how many people are on this call from every part of the world. In most other schools, they will say we are very international, but then 90% of their students will come from one country. With us, you have students coming from 133 countries now. I swear I've even seen a girl before from Afghanistan in London, which was a shock to me, in as much as we're trying to encourage that. And the last point to answer that great question, Thomas, is the fact that all our professors, myself included, we're not just pure academics. What I mean by pure academics, we have PhDs, we spend all our lives in schools and universities. All our professors come from the working world. Some of them actually, to this day, they hold their corporate jobs and they teach for us part-time. And you can ask me, but what's the importance of that? And the point here is that they can bring in their professional experiences inside the classroom. And you can benefit from that because that's your aspiration, to become a future professional. So I think those 5 points do illustrate some of our competitive differentiation from other schools that we're super proud of.
Yeah, Dean Mo covered a lot there, so I'll chime in on a couple. So two things that really stand out for me is one, and I mentioned this a little bit or briefly when I was speaking earlier, is the transformation that happens. And yes, you know, your undergraduate in general is a transformational experience. But what I've seen from like my own experience and then what I've seen at Hult, the fact that you're exposed to people from all around the world, the content that you're learning from the professors that Dean Mo was talking about, that transformation is pretty incredible, honestly. I mean, there are some students that come and work with me and they're like, you know, Tom, I'm actually really shy. And, you know, in my culture, like we don't network, we don't talk about ourselves, which I totally understand, right? So seeing somebody in their freshman year and then seeing them in their junior or their senior year and seeing them contribute, leading up clubs, it's a really special thing. And I don't think that's as common in every school. So it's pretty special for Hult. And the other piece I was going to talk about was just the people, and not just the staff and professors. Although the part I do want to mention about them is that we care tremendously. The people that gravitate towards Hult, they are very good at what they do, but I will also say they have big hearts and they really want to see you succeed. And I honestly truly mean that. And that's really special. But also the tenacity of the Hult students really impresses me every year. Like I said, there's some students who they've never been to the US, they've never been to the campus or the country that they go to study, whether it's the London campus or Boston campus. They have to adjust to language, potentially to culture background, and they go for it and they do it. And it's just, you don't see that in every school. So those are a couple of points that wows me every year, and actually is kind of why I do what I do, because it's really fulfilling. So.
If I may, Thomas, just add to what Tom has just said about people. At Hult, you're not just a statistic, you're a person. We know who you are. I know so many of you will find this hard to believe, but you can hear it when Tom made the presentation. We know our students by their names, right? And we always maintain an open door policy. I will go as far as saying that at Hult, we see our students as the second family. You might be studying away from Indonesia, from Morocco, but when you come to Hult, you will see that we are your second family. I can give many examples where I visit our students who unfortunately had medical issues and had to be admitted to hospital here in London. I used to go there 3 times a week. We had a boy from Colombia. There were 3 brothers, and the youngest one, the mother came to visit him here, and the mother passed away in my presence in hospital. So we have tremendous emphasis in our relationship with these students, because so many of us, myself included, I have been where you are before, right? I came from the smallest country in Africa called the Gambia. I did all my studies in England. I knew the challenges I faced. So I can resonate and understand what you're going through. So when you study here, I think what sets us apart, in the big schools with 10,000 undergrads, you get lost. You're just a number, right? They don't have, the classrooms will have 200 students in a lecture theater. Our average class size at Hult is 35. We know each student in my class. I'm not making this up. Every student in my marketing class, I know their name, where they come from. And I can even write maybe a chapter on each of them. That's how well we know each of them. So I think that is pretty unique. Sorry, Thomas, I took longer, but I think, Tom, that's a great point just to overemphasize upon.
No, not a problem at all. So I do think, so we are running a little bit low on time. I'm going to give us about the next 8 minutes in order to wrap up some of these. I will say, first off and foremost, if we don't get to your question, please reach out directly to your enrollment advisor after this, because they can help answer those questions as well. And there are numerous events like this that you can join. We're going to be having multiples of these events throughout the year, and there are going to be many, many other student-oriented events that you can join as well. So if you're not able to get into this one, if you're not able to get your question answered, that is okay, but just jump in and send some of these, and we will hopefully get to them as quickly as we can. For me personally, to add to the already great things that that Tom and Dean Mo have said, for me, it's not just the internationalism and the cultural diversity on campus. It's the reality that we live our principles. We're a very relationship-driven school, and as a relationship-driven school, that is not just relationship-driven to students, it's relationship-driven to faculty and staff, people like me. It's relationship-driven to external partners, to bringing in quality partners for our students to learn from doing challenge learning in a lot of ways, trying to essentially be the future of education. And as a person who's worked in education for most of my professional career, I find that very refreshing. And I think it is very student-centered by comparison to many programs that are more sit in a lecture hall and get talked to for 50 minutes 3 times a week for an entire semester and then take an exam, where on our hand, that might happen once or twice in your classes, but the majority of your coursework is having conversations and collaborating and competing with your classmates, which is pretty cool. Okay, awesome. So looking at this, I think this might be a good question for Dean Mo. What is the student to faculty ratio in general?
I think, like I said before, we are a very small institution, and we want to remain small by choice, because we believe the approach to education should be very personalized. We get into that state now. I think should be something along the lines of 15:1, right, in terms of our professor-student ratio. The classes, especially in your freshman year, the biggest class you will sit in is 68 people, maximum in London. And I think in Boston, it might go up to like 72. But when you decide on your major, right, once you decide on your major, the average class size is maximum of 35, 40. In London is 42. I think in Boston is about the same. So we put heavy emphasis on building, like you said, Thomas, relationship building is everything. You know, all of you will be making huge commitments over the next couple of years about your choice of university. So making sure that you have that environment in which you feel comfortable to interact and feel supported and heard, I think are very important. Right.
Absolutely agree. The ability to actually speak with the professor and meet with them, I think, is cool. Tom, some of the students that he was pointing out for success stories, I know as well. And I think that one of the coolest things in speaking with those students is realizing just how many of them are not just in a traditional academic environment, you're like working for a professor, whereas in a Hult environment, the student and the professor, especially as our students move towards graduation, are actually working together and collaborating on projects process that work for both the student and the professor to drive either new businesses or new opportunities for on campus or off campus, which I think is very cool. Okay, we have 5 minutes left. I'm going to ask you guys to continue to put questions in there if you have them. I do have a great question from a student about the interview, the tips about the interview process. And so unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to reveal the questions that are going to be asked, of course, but one of the things that I would give you first and foremost is to dress as if it is an interview. Oftentimes, students, and I think in general and understandably during the pandemic, we've kind of like loosened our standards on how to dress, which I think is okay. And I think that's one of the things that we are interested in at Hult is the future of work. But ultimately, you are representing yourself to a university. So you don't need to buy a suit and tie if you don't have one, and you don't need to wear one necessarily, but you do need to dress semi-professionally in clean attire. Make sure that your environment is clear of clutter and noise when you're doing your interview. After all, I'm trying to hear what you have to say, and if I can't hear what you have to say, then that makes me a little sad. And for you as a student, what I want to hear during the interview is who you are. There aren't right answers in that interview process. I'm not looking for you to give me the perfect answer. I'm looking for you to give me your answer, because ultimately that is each student has had different life experiences, different opportunities, and they come from different places. And so during the interview, I want you to tell me about you, because ultimately we get very few opportunities to brag about ourselves and to talk about ourselves in real life. And this is the opportunity for you to do so as you go through the process of Hult. So I have a question about vaccinations required to live on campus. As of right now, there are vaccination requirements to live on campus. A variety of vaccines are required to live on campus or to enter countries. If you're a non-US citizen or a non-UK citizen and you need the visa, you do have to take certain vaccinations. And that's something that we would cover during your post-confirmation period during the summer, talking to you about. As of right now, the COVID-19 vaccine is not required for students to live on campus. However, we are, because the majority of our students are international students, and we want to ensure that they have the opportunity to take the vaccine upon arrival. In terms of changing requirements, things change daily, as I'm sure you can recognize, as I'm sure you know, through school requirements and through mask mandate requirements. And so our student services and our enrollment teams do their absolute best to update students constantly and parents constantly about changing local laws, changing international restrictions, changing national restrictions. And we work very hard to keep our students safe and healthy on campus. Great question. Last 2 minutes, any other questions before we wrap up? All right, cool. So first off, I'd like to thank both Tom and Dean Mo for joining us today. Your expertise and your input is always extremely appreciated, and perhaps more than our time. I really appreciate every parent, every student, every counselor, every teacher who showed up to join us today. Please reach out to your enrollment advisors if they don't reach out to you first after attending. You'll have the opportunity to ask them questions, and I highly encourage you to join us in our future events, pushing into classes, seeing what we do on campus virtually. I'd encourage you to come for a tour if you're able. Our Boston campus is indeed accepting tours now, and so you're welcome to come and tour the campus itself. For the questions we didn't get to, please go ahead and ask those. We're going to do our best to make sure that we get those answered to you. But thank you for joining us from wherever you are in the world, and have a great rest of your weekend. Bye, all.